They did this for her 80th birthday, but they never imagined what would happen next. Eleanor Wilson took a deep breath as she watched her family gathered in her living room. 80 years of life, and for the first time in decades, everyone was there to celebrate her birthday. That's when her eldest son, Richard, approached with the mischievous smile she'd known since his childhood. Before she could react, he gently pushed her face into the cake, a prank that drew laughter from everyone present. Eleanor laughed along, feeling the sweet frosting drip down her face. But when she raised her hands to wipe her eyes, what she saw made her freeze completely. There, hanging around her daughter-in-law Jennifer's neck, was something that made her question her own sanity. The white gold wedding band of her late husband William glinted against Jennifer's tanned skin. The same ring Eleanor was absolutely certain she had placed on her husband's finger before his burial 15 years ago. No one noticed when Eleanor fell silent, still smeared with frosting. But Jennifer caught her mother-in-law's stare and instinctively brought a hand to her chest, covering the necklace. The color drained from her face. "Grandma, are you okay?" asked Matthew, her 17-year-old grandson, noticing she had stopped laughing. I'm fine, sweetheart," Eleanor murmured, forcing a smile as she accepted the napkin Richard handed her. The rest of the party passed like a blur for Eleanor. She answered questions, thanked everyone for their wishes, but her mind was entirely fixated on that ring. How was this possible? Had she lost her mind? No, she remembered clearly. She had kissed William's hand one last time before they closed the casket. When the last guests finally left, Eleanor settled into her favorite armchair, pretending to be tired. Richard and Jennifer were in the kitchen washing dishes, while her daughter Barbara sorted through the gifts. "Mom, it was a beautiful party," Barbara said, walking over. "He would have been proud." Eleanor only nodded, discreetly watching Jennifer through the kitchen doorway. Her daughter-in-law had tucked the necklace under her blouse, but Eleanor knew it was there. That night, Eleanor barely slept. She wandered the empty house, pausing before the photos of William displayed in the living room. In one taken on their last anniversary before he passed, the ring shone on his finger. "William, what's going on here?" she whispered to the photo, feeling a mix of confusion and anger rising in her chest. The next morning, Eleanor called Jennifer before 8. "Jennifer, dear, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course, Mrs. Wilson. Is something wrong?" "Just come, please, and come alone." 30 minutes later, Jennifer knocked on the door. Eleanor immediately noticed she wasn't wearing the necklace. "Sit down," Eleanor said, gesturing to the sofa. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you. You're worrying me. What's going on?" Eleanor sat in the armchair across from her, studying her daughter-in-law's face. Jennifer was visibly nervous, fidgeting with her hands. "Yesterday, during the party, I saw something that deeply troubled me," Eleanor began slowly. "The necklace you were wearing. Where did you get that ring?" Jennifer swallowed hard, and Eleanor saw her hands tremble slightly. "What ring, Mrs. Wilson?" "Don't lie to me, Jennifer. I saw it clearly. It was my husband's wedding band." Silence stretched between them for long seconds. Jennifer looked away, and Eleanor knew she was right. "Richard gave it to me," Jennifer finally whispered. "He said it was a family heirloom he'd kept safe." Eleanor felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. "A family heirloom? Jennifer, this wedding band was on my husband's finger when he was buried. I placed it there myself." "That's impossible, Mrs. Wilson. Richard would never do such a thing." "Then explain how it left the grave and ended up in your hands." Jennifer stood up, visibly shaken. "You must be confusing it with another ring. Richard isn't capable of—" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to it. "Jennifer," Eleanor interrupted, her voice growing firmer. "I've known that ring for 50 years. I picked it out myself when we got engaged. There's a small mark on the left side where William hit it with a tool while working in the garden. Would you like me to describe more details?" Jennifer's face went pale. She sank back onto the couch. "Mrs. Wilson, I didn't know. Richard told me it was an old family heirloom he'd kept as a backup. And you didn't question why he'd never mentioned this heirloom before? I did, but he said he wanted to surprise me, that it was important for me to wear something meaningful to the family. Eleanor felt a wave of nausea. Her son had lied to his own wife. When did he give it to you? 3 months ago, on our wedding anniversary. Eleanor did the math quickly. 3 months ago was April, William's birthday. Richard had visited his father's grave alone, as he did every year, or so she'd thought. Jennifer, I need you to return that ring to me. Mrs. Wilson, I understand your position, but it's a gift from my husband. I can't just... You can't. Eleanor stood, and for the first time in years, her voice carried an authority that made Jennifer shrink back. We're talking about a piece of jewelry stolen from my husband's grave, from your father-in-law. I didn't know that. Now you do. And you'd still keep wearing it? Jennifer fell silent for a long moment, torn between loyalty to her husband and the truth she was uncovering. I need to talk to Richard first. No, Eleanor said firmly. I'll talk to Richard. You just need to return what isn't yours. Mrs. Wilson, please understand my position. Richard will be furious if I... And should I care about Richard's anger when he desecrated his own father's grave? The words came out harsher than Eleanor intended, but she felt a rage she hadn't known in years. It wasn't just about the ring. It was the realization that the son she'd always trusted was capable of something so terrible. Jennifer began to cry quietly. Mrs. Wilson, things haven't been easy for us. Richard's been going through difficulties in our marriage. He said he needed to prove his love to me. What kind of difficulties? Jennifer hesitated, wiping her tears. There was an affair. Richard's. I found out a few months ago. Eleanor felt as if the ground had opened beneath her. First the grave, now an affair. What else would she learn about the son she thought she knew? And he thought stealing his father's ring would win you back. He didn't say he stole it. He said it was an inheritance he'd saved for the right moment. Eleanor sat back down, suddenly feeling decades older than her 80 years. Jennifer, you need to understand something. No matter what problems Richard is facing, they don't justify what he did. That ring represents 50 years of my marriage. It's the promise I made to my husband that he'd rest in peace with everything important to him. I know, Mrs. Wilson. I know, and I feel awful about it. Then help me make it right. Give me back the ring. Jennifer remained silent for several minutes, clearly wrestling with a difficult decision. Richard will have to know I told you. He will indeed, and he'll have to explain much more than that. Jennifer took a deep breath and reached into her purse. From it, she pulled out a small velvet box. I brought it with me because something inside me knew this wasn't right. Eleanor opened the box with trembling hands. There was William's wedding ring, exactly as she remembered it. The tiny mark on the side, the engraved initials inside, everything the same. Thank you, Eleanor whispered, clutching the box to her chest. What will you do now? I'm going to have a very serious talk with my son, and you should think about what you want to do with your marriage. After Jennifer left, Eleanor stood alone in the living room holding the ring. So many memories surfaced. The day William proposed, nervous and stumbling over his words. The difficult early years when they struggled to build a life together. The joyful moments when Richard and later Barbara were born. And finally William's last days, when he held her hand and promised she'd take care of the family. How had things come to this? The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Richard. Mum, Jennifer just came home crying. She said you two argued over a necklace. What happened? Eleanor took a deep breath. It was time for the truth. Richard, can you come over? We need to talk. About what? Jennifer's saying nonsense about Dad's wedding ring and... Just come, Richard, and come prepared to give me some answers. Mum, you're scaring me. You should be scared. Eleanor hung up and went to the kitchen to brew a strong coffee. She'd need it. 20 minutes later, Richard knocked harder than necessary. Through the window, Eleanor could see he was visibly upset. Mum, what's this about fighting with Jennifer over a necklace? She came home devastated. Eleanor opened the door and stared at him. Her eldest son, 45 years old, hair beginning to grey, his face tight with anger. "Sit down, Richard. I'd rather stand. I want to know what's going on." Eleanor returned to the living room and sat in her armchair, placing the box with the ring on the coffee table. "Recognize this?" Richard looked at the box and his expression shifted completely. Anger gave way to panic. Where did you get that?" "Your wife returned it, after I explained to her where you'd taken it from." Richard collapsed onto the couch, dragging his hands over his face. "Mom, I can explain." "Then explain. Tell me how the ring that was on your father's finger when he was buried ended up around your wife's neck 3 months later." "That's not how it happened." "No? Then tell me how it did." Richard stayed silent for a long time, clearly searching for words. "Mom, things with Jennifer are complicated. Jennifer told me about the affair." Richard jerked his head up. "She told you?" "She did. Along with the fact that you told her the ring was a family heirloom you'd kept." "Mom, I was desperate. Jennifer was thinking about leaving me. I had to prove our marriage meant everything to me." "And you thought stealing your father's ring was the best way to do that?" "I didn't steal it. He was my father too. I had a right to that ring." Eleanor felt anger rise like a wave. "A right? Richard, that ring was where it was because I put it there, because that's where your father wanted it to stay." "Mom, Dad's been gone 15 years. That ring was just wasting away in the cemetery." "Wasting away? It was where it belonged. It was where I wanted it." Richard stood up, pacing the room. "Mom, you don't understand. I was about to lose my family. Jennifer was talking about divorce. I needed to do something grand, something to show how much she means to me." "Then why not buy a new ring?" "Because it wouldn't have the same meaning. Dad's ring represents decades of love, of commitment. I wanted Jennifer to know our marriage had that same strength." Eleanor Wilson stood up, shaking with anger. "Our marriage, Richard. The strength of my marriage with your father. You stole the story of my marriage to try and save yours." "It wasn't stealing, Mom. I'm his son too. And I'm his widow," Eleanor shouted, startling even herself. "I was the one who chose to leave that ring with him. I was the one visiting that grave for the last 15 years, believing everything was as it should be." Richard stopped pacing, clearly shocked by his mother's outburst. "Mom, You what, Richard? Did you not think of me? Did you not consider how I'd feel if I found out?" "I didn't think you'd find out." "Oh, I see. So the problem wasn't doing it, it was getting caught." "That's not what I'm saying." "That's exactly what you're saying." They stared at each other for several seconds, both breathless. Eleanor had never fought like this with any of her children. "Mom," Richard finally said, his voice quieter, "I know I messed up, but I was desperate. The affair, it happened because I was drinking too much, working too much. Jennifer felt neglected. And you thought a stolen ring would fix the problems you created? I thought if she knew how much I value her..." "For heaven's sake, Richard, you lied to her, told her it was a kept heirloom. How does that show real love?" Richard sat back down, his head in his hands. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" Eleanor watched her son for a moment. She saw the boy who used to run into her arms when he got hurt, but also the man who'd made choices she never imagined he was capable of. "Richard, you didn't just violate your father's grave. You violated your wife's trust, my trust, and the memory of the man who raised you to be better than this." "I know, Mom, I know, and I'm sorry." "Sorry because you got caught, or sorry because you understand it was wrong?" Richard looked up at her. "Both, but mostly because I hurt you. I never wanted to do that." Eleanor felt tears forming but held them back. "Richard, I raised you to be a man of character. Your father worked hard to set an example for you and Barbara, and now I find out you're capable of lying, cheating, and robbing a grave. Where did we go wrong?" "Mom, you didn't go wrong anywhere. I made bad choices." "How many other bad choices, Richard? What else am I going to find out?" "Nothing, Mom. I swear there's nothing else." Eleanor studied him for a long moment, deciding whether to believe him. "Where are the other things?" "What other things?" "From the grave. Did you only take the ring, or was there more?" Richard looked away, and Eleanor knew. "Richard, There. There was a chain with a St. Joseph medal. I took that too. Where is it? I sold it. Eleanor felt as if she'd been slapped. The medal had been her gift to William on his last birthday, one he always wore saying St. Joseph protected him at work. You sold your father's medal? Mom, I was in financial trouble. The business wasn't doing well. I owed money. And instead of asking for help, you chose to rob your father's grave. I was going to replace it. It was just a loan. Eleanor stood and began pacing the room, feeling she had to move or she'd explode. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Richard, do you have any idea what you've done? It wasn't just a medal. It was the medal I gave him. It was the medal he was wearing when he died. It was part of our story. Mom, I can try to buy it back. Buy it back? Do you think you can buy back 15 years of me believing my husband was resting in peace with his most precious belongings? Richard fell silent and Eleanor kept pacing the room. You know what hurts me the most, Richard? It's not even what you did. It's discovering that the son I raised doesn't exist. The man I thought you were would never do something like this. Mom, I'm still your son. Are you? My son wouldn't lie to his wife. My son wouldn't desecrate his own father's grave. My son wouldn't sell family heirlooms to fix his financial problems. Mom, please. Please, what, Richard? Please pretend this never happened. Please forgive and forget everything. I was hoping that I'd pat your head like I always have. That I'd find an excuse for your actions like I always did. Richard looked at her in surprise. What do you mean always did? Eleanor stopped walking and faced him. Do you think I never noticed, Richard? Do you think I never saw how everything always came easier for you? How I always smoothed things over so you wouldn't face the consequences of your actions? Mom, you're exaggerating. Am I? When you crashed the car at 18 driving drunk, who paid for the repairs and talked to the other driver's family? When you got fired for arguing with your boss, who called in favors to get you a new job? When you needed money for the wedding, who paid for the celebration you couldn't afford? Richard stayed silent, clearly uncomfortable with where the conversation was heading. Those were different situations, Mum. Were they? Or were they all situations where you made poor choices and I cleaned up the mess? You're my mother. It was your job to help me. Eleanor felt deep sadness mix with her anger. It was my job to help you, Richard. It wasn't my job to keep you from growing and learning from your mistakes. Mom, where are you going with this? I'm saying that maybe I raised a man who thinks he can do anything because there'll always be someone to fix things for him. That's not fair, isn't it? Then explain to me how a 45-year-old man thinks he can steal from his own father's grave and somehow everything will be okay. Richard stayed silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. Mom, I know I've ruined everything. I know I've disappointed you and Dad. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know I never meant to hurt you. Eleanor looked at her son and saw tears in his eyes. For a moment, she felt the maternal urge to comfort him, to say everything would be all right. But this time, she held back. Richard, your intentions don't matter anymore. What matters are your actions, and your actions have shown me a man I don't recognize. What do you want me to do? I want you to find a way to buy back that medal. I want you to tell Barbara what you did, and I want you to stop expecting me to fix your problems. Mom, and I want you to leave my house now. I need to be alone to process all of this. Richard slowly stood up. Can I call later? You can, but don't expect things to go back to normal quickly. After Richard left, Eleanor stood alone in the living room, clutching William's wedding ring. For the first time in 15 years, she truly wept for the loss of her husband, but this time she wasn't crying just for him. She was crying over the discovery that perhaps she had never truly known the son she had raised. The phone rang again. It was Barbara. Mom, Richard just called me. He said you two had a fight. but he wouldn't tell me why. What happened? Eleanor took a deep breath. It was time to tell her daughter the truth as well. Barbara, can you come over? I have something to tell you about your brother. Mom, you're scaring me. Did something serious happen? Serious enough. Just come, please. While waiting for Barbara to arrive, Eleanor went to her room and opened the drawer where she kept the old photos. She found a picture of William wearing the St. Joseph medal, taken just a few weeks before he left. She stared at the photo for a long time, trying to imagine how he would feel knowing what Richard had done. When Barbara arrived, Eleanor could see the worry written on her face. Her youngest daughter, now 41, had always been more sensitive than Richard, more attuned to others' feelings. "Mom, what's going on?" Richard sounded desperate on the phone. Eleanor led Barbara to the living room and told her the whole story. She watched shock and disbelief alternate on her daughter's face. "Mom, this can't be true. Richard would never do something like that." "That's exactly what I thought, but here's the proof." Eleanor showed the ring to Barbara, who examined it carefully. "It really is Dad's ring. I remember the mark on the side. And there's more. He also took the St. Joseph medal and sold it." Barbara fell silent for several minutes, absorbing the information. "Mum, I don't understand. Why would he do this?" "Apparently, he was having money trouble and problems in his marriage. He thought stealing from his own father's grave was the solution. That's sick, Mum." "I know. And the worst part is he lied to Jennifer, saying it was an inheritance he'd kept." Barbara shook her head, clearly disturbed. "Mum, there's something I need to tell you." "What?" "I knew." Eleanor felt like she'd been punched again. "What do you mean you knew?" "Not about the ring or the medal. But I knew about the money trouble, and I knew about the affair." "Why didn't you tell me?" Barbara looked away, clearly uncomfortable. Because I always knew Richard was your favorite. I always knew that even if I told you, you'd find a way to justify what he did." Eleanor felt like she'd been slapped. "Barbara, that's not true." "Isn't it? Mom, do you remember when I got into med school?" "Of course I remember. You said you didn't want to go." "I lied. I wanted to study medicine more than anything in the world. But when I told you, you said it would be better if I helped Richard with the family business. That med school would take too much time, and the family needed me." Eleanor felt the ground shift beneath her. "Barbara, I thought you weren't sure." "I was sure, Mum. But you made it seem like I was being selfish for thinking of myself when Richard needed help. Why did you never tell me this?" "Because I was young, and I believed you knew what was best. And by the time I realized I'd lost my chance, it was too late." Eleanor sank heavily into the armchair, feeling the weight of decades of decisions she now saw in a completely different light. "Barbara, I never meant to hurt you." "I know, Mom, but you did. And it wasn't just once. Every time Richard needed something, I was the one who had to give it up. Every time. Why didn't you ever say anything before?" "Because I learned to accept it. I learned that in our family, Richard's needs always came first." Tears began to stream down Eleanor's face. "Barbara, I'm so sorry. I never realized I was doing that." "I know you didn't, Mom. But that doesn't make it any less real." They remained silent for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "Is there anything else I should know?" Eleanor finally asked. Barbara hesitated before answering. "Yes, about what Richard did at the cemetery." "Do you know more?" "I know when he did it, because I saw him." Eleanor looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean you saw him?" "On Dad's anniversary in April. I had gone to visit the grave early in the morning, like I always do. When I was leaving, I saw Richard arriving with tools." "And you didn't think that was strange?" "I did. I asked what he was doing, and he said he'd noticed the headstone was loose and wanted to fix it." "And you believed him?" "Not completely. Something bothered me, so I went back later, hidden." Eleanor held her breath. "And what did you see?" "I saw him opening the grave. I saw him taking things out. And I saw him closing it all back up." "And you didn't do anything?" "I was in shock, Mom. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was paralyzed." "Why didn't you tell me?" Barbara looked directly at her. Because I knew you wouldn't believe me. I knew you'd find a way to justify his actions like you always do. Eleanor stood up and began pacing the room again, feeling utterly lost. My God, Barbara. What kind of mother have I been? What kind of family have we become? A family where secrets are more important than the truth. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, Eleanor stopped pacing and looked at Barbara. What do you mean by that? Mom, our family is full of secrets. Richard hid the affair, hid the financial problems, hid what he did at the cemetery. I hid what I saw, hid my resentment, hid my pain over losing the chance to study medicine. And you hid the fact that you always favored Richard. I never... Mom, please, let's stop lying to each other. You always knew you treated us differently. You always knew and chose to ignore it. Eleanor sat down again, feeling as if she was seeing her family for the first time. You're right. I always knew and pretended not to see. Why, Mom? Why was Richard always more important? Eleanor stayed silent for a long time, wrestling with memories and feelings she had tried to ignore for decades. Because he was just like his father, and because when he was born, I almost lost him. What do you mean? Richard was born premature. He was in the hospital for weeks. The doctors said he might not survive. I spent entire days there, praying, promising God anything if he would let my baby live. Barbara listened in silence. When he finally came home, I think I never stopped trying to protect him, as if at any moment he could be taken from me. And me. You were a healthy, strong baby. You never gave me any reason to worry. You were always independent, always figured things out on your own. And so I deserved less attention. Eleanor looked at her daughter and saw the pain in her eyes. No, that's why I was a terrible mother to you. Barbara began to cry, and Eleanor stood up to hug her. Barbara, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for every time I failed you. I'm sorry for letting you give up your dreams to protect your brothers. Mom, I always wanted you to see me. I always wanted you to notice that I needed affection too, that I needed attention. I see you now, and I hate myself for taking so long to see. They held each other for several minutes, crying together over years of unspoken pain. Mom, Barbara finally said, pulling away from the hug, what do we do now? I don't know. For the first time in my life, I truly don't know. What about Richard? Richard will have to learn to deal with the consequences of his actions, without my help this time. What about the medal? He'll have to find a way to get it back, on his own. What about us? Our family? Eleanor looked at her daughter and saw in her the girl who had sacrificed her dreams for a family that never truly valued her. As for us, we're going to start being honest. We'll stop hiding our feelings. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for the years I was unfair to you. Mom, you don't have to... Yes, I do. And I'll start now. Eleanor stood up and went to the study. She returned with an envelope she had taken from a locked drawer. What's this? Money I was saving to split equally between you two after I was gone. But you'll get your share now. Mom, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, and you will. And you know what else you're going to do? You're going to enroll in a medical school for mature students. It's never too late to chase a dream. Barbara looked at the envelope with tears in her eyes. Mom, this won't give me back the lost years. No, it won't. But it can give us the years we still have ahead. At that moment, the phone rang. It was Matthew, her grandson. Grandma, can I come over? I need to talk to you. Of course, sweetheart. Did something happen? It's about my dad. He came home acting really strange today, and my mum was crying. Did they fight? Eleanor glanced at Barbara, who nodded understandingly. Come over, Matthew. We have some things to talk about. While waiting for Matthew to arrive, Eleanor and Barbara discussed their next steps. It was clear the family needed deep changes. When Matthew arrived, Eleanor could see the boy was worried and confused. Grandma, what's going on? My parents are acting so weird. Eleanor looked at her grandson, remembering he was caught in the middle of all this without understanding any of it. Matthew, sit down. I'm going to tell you the truth about what happened. The truth about what? About some choices your father made recently. Eleanor told Matthew the whole story, from the discovery of the ring to her conversation with Richard. She watched shock and disappointment grow on the teenager's face. My dad really did that? He stole from Grandpa's grave? Yes, sweetheart, and he lied to all of us about it. Matthew stayed silent for a long time, processing the information. Grandma, does that mean my dad is a thief? The question hurt Eleanor more than she expected. Your father made some very bad choices, Matthew, but that doesn't define who he is as a whole person. How doesn't it? If someone steals, they're a thief. Barbara moved closer to her nephew. Matthew, people are complicated. Your dad did something terrible, but that doesn't mean everything he's ever done was terrible. But how can I trust him now? It was a question Eleanor didn't know how to answer. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe you can't trust him like before. Maybe you'll have to build a new kind of relationship. And if he lied about this, what else has he lied about? Eleanor saw in Matthew the same doubt she was feeling. How do you trust someone after discovering they're capable of things you never imagined? Matthew, Eleanor finally said, your father will have to prove he's changed. He'll have to earn back all our trust. And that will take time. What if he can't? Then we'll have to learn to live with this new reality. Matthew stayed quiet, clearly wrestling with thoughts too heavy for a 17-year-old. Grandma, can I stay here tonight? I don't want to go home yet. Of course you can. Barbara, why don't you stay too? We can order pizza and try to work through this together. As Barbara called the pizzeria, Eleanor watched Matthew. He was clearly shaken, but there was also something different in his posture. A forced maturity that comes when we realize the adults we trust aren't perfect. Grandma, Matthew said suddenly, I need to tell you something. What is it, sweetheart? I think I already knew something was wrong with my parents. What do you mean? Over the last few months, they've been fighting a lot, and Dad's been acting strange, going out at night, taking calls in another room. Eleanor felt her heart tighten. Apparently, the problems in Richard's family were more visible than he'd realized. And your mum? How has she been handling it? She's been crying a lot. Sometimes I hear her in her room when she thinks I'm not around. Why didn't you talk to either of them about it? Because whenever I tried, they said everything was fine, that it was just grown-up stuff. Eleanor shook her head. More secrets, more lies. Matthew, next time you feel something's wrong, don't accept those answers. You have the right to know what's happening in your family. But what if they don't want to tell me? Then you come talk to me or Aunt Barbara. We won't keep you in the dark anymore. Barbara walked back into the room. Pizza's ordered. It'll be here in 40 minutes. Aunt, Matthew said, Grandma told me you always wanted to be a doctor. That's true. Why didn't you do it? Barbara glanced at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. Because I let other people's fears and expectations drown out my own dreams. And now, can you still do it? Your grandmother thinks so. And you know what? I think she's right. Matthew smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. That'd be really cool, Aunt. You'd be an amazing doctor. The pizza arrived, and the three of them sat at the kitchen table. It felt strange, but also freeing to talk openly about problems that had been hidden for so long. Grandma, Matthew said between bites, can I ask you a weird question? Of course. Do you regret anything in your life? Eleanor thought for a moment. I regret many things, Matthew, but mostly I regret pretending problems didn't exist for so many years. What will you do differently now? I'll stop pretending. I'll face problems head-on, even when it's hard. Does that include my dad? Yes, it does. Your father will have to face the consequences of his actions, and I'll have to learn to let him do that on his own. After they finished eating, Barbara helped Eleanor clean up while Matthew watched TV in the living room. Mom, Barbara said quietly, do you think Richard can change? I don't know. I hope so, but I won't hold my breath. He's an adult and the change has to come from him. What about Jennifer? Jennifer seems like a good person stuck in an impossible situation. I hope she finds the strength to make the right choices for herself and the baby. What baby? She's pregnant, I found out today during our talk. Barbara stopped drying the dishes. Does Richard know? I think so. Maybe that's why he was so desperate to save the marriage. My God, Mom. That makes everything even more complicated. It does, but it doesn't change the fact that he made terrible choices. That night, Barbara slept in the guest room and Matthew on the couch. Eleanor stayed up late, staring out the window, thinking about how much her life had changed in just 2 days. The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Jennifer. Mrs. Wilson, can I come over? I need to talk to you. Of course, dear. Come by. An hour later, Jennifer knocked on the door. Eleanor could see she'd been crying heavily. How are you holding up? Confused, hurt, angry. And Richard? Richard is devastated. He hasn't stopped crying since yesterday. He says he lost everything that mattered to him. Eleanor served them coffee and they sat in the living room. Jennifer, what have you decided about the marriage? I don't know. I love Richard, Mrs. Wilson, but I don't know if I can trust him again. That's understandable. He wants to try couples therapy, says he'll do anything to win back my trust. And you? What do you want? I want to believe he can change, but I'm pregnant, Mrs. Wilson. I have to think about the baby too. Eleanor nodded sympathetically. Jennifer, can I give you some advice? Please, don't make any final decisions right now. You're emotionally shaken. Give yourself time to process everything that's happened. Richard wants us to go back to therapy immediately. And do you want to? I don't know if I'm ready to sit in a room with him and pretend everything can be okay. Then don't. Go to therapy when you feel ready. But what if I never feel ready? Then that will be your answer. Jennifer sipped her coffee in silence for a few minutes. Mrs. Wilson, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Have you ever forgiven someone for something unforgivable? Eleanor thought about the question for a long time. No, I think I've always found ways to justify the actions of the people I love. But forgiving something truly unforgivable, I've never had to do that before. And now, with Richard, I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive him. I think some wounds are too deep to heal completely. That scares me. Why? Because if even his own mother can't forgive him, how can I? Eleanor looked at Jennifer and saw a young, pregnant woman trying to decide the future of her family. Jennifer, my relationship with Richard is different from yours. I'm his mother. You're his wife. They're different kinds of love and different kinds of betrayal. But still, you don't have to make the same decision I did. You need to make the right decision for you. At that moment, Barbara came downstairs, dressed for work. Good morning, Jennifer. Hi, Barbara. How are you? Trying to figure out how we got to this point. Barbara poured herself coffee and joined them. Jennifer, can I ask you something? Sure. Did you know Richard was having financial trouble? I knew the business wasn't doing well, but he never told me how bad it was. And the cheating, when did you find out? Jennifer lowered her eyes. 3 months ago. I found messages on his phone. Was that when he gave you the ring? It was right after. He said he wanted to prove our marriage meant everything to him. Barbara and Eleanor exchanged a meaningful glance. Jennifer, Barbara said gently, do you realize he used his own suffering to manipulate you? What do you mean? He cheated, you found out, and instead of facing the consequences, he made a grand gesture to distract you from what he'd done. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Eleanor interrupted. And the worst part is, he lied about where the ring came from. Even in a moment that should have been about total honesty, he kept lying. Jennifer started crying again. I want so badly to believe he can change. Jennifer, Barbara said, moving closer to her. He can change, but you can't make decisions based on who he might become. You have to decide based on who he is now. But what about the baby? The baby needs parents who are honest with each other. If Richard can't be honest, maybe it's better if you're not together. How am I supposed to raise a child alone? Eleanor stood and sat beside Jennifer. Sweetheart, you won't be alone. You'll have our family. You'll have me, Barbara, Matthew. Richard may have failed as a husband, but that doesn't mean we'll abandon you. You'd really say that after everything that's happened? I would. You are part of this family, and so is your baby. No matter what happens between you and Richard, Jennifer hugged Eleanor, crying, "Thank you. I was so afraid of being alone. You'll never be alone. I promise." After Barbara left for work and Jennifer had gone, Eleanor was alone in the house. Matthew had gone to school, dropped off by Barbara. Around noon, Richard appeared at the door. Eleanor could see he was devastated, his eyes red, his beard unshaven, his clothes wrinkled. "Mom, can I come in?" "Of course." They sat in the living room and Eleanor waited for him to speak first. "Mom, I spent the whole night thinking, and you're right about everything." "About what, specifically?" "About how I've been spoiled my whole life. About how I always expected someone else to solve my problems. About how I've become someone I don't even recognize." Eleanor listened in silence. "I called a therapist this morning, made an appointment for tomorrow." "That's good. And I'm trying to find the medal. I've already called several second-hand stores." "All right. Mom, I know you're angry, and I know I deserve it, but I need you to know I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this." "Richard, this isn't about fixing. It's about you understanding that some things can't be fixed." "What do you mean?" "The trust I had in you, the image I had of you as a person, the peace I felt about your father's rest. Those things can't be fixed." Richard lowered his head. "I know, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life." "You will." "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" Eleanor looked at her son for a long time before answering. "I don't know, Richard. Honestly, I don't. And Jennifer. Jennifer will make her own decisions, and you'll have to accept whatever she chooses. What if she decides to leave me? Then you'll have to face the consequences of your choices." Richard was silent for several minutes. "Mom, I always felt pressured to be perfect, to be the son you and Dad wanted." "Richard, I never asked you to be perfect. I asked you to be honest." "I know, but I felt like disappointing you would be the end of the world." "And you'd rather lie than disappoint?" "I'd rather pretend everything was fine." Eleanor shook her head. "Richard, you're a 45-year-old man. You can't keep blaming other people's expectations for your choices." "I know. I'm just trying to understand how I got to this point. You got here because someone always shielded you from facing the consequences of your actions. And this time, no one will. You won't help me?" "Not this time. This time, you'll have to figure it out on your own." Richard nodded, and Eleanor could see he was starting to grasp the gravity of the situation. "Mom, can I still come visit you?" "You can, but our relationship will be different from now on." "Different how?" "More honest, harder, and without the privileges you've always had." After Richard left, Eleanor sat in the garden, looking at the flowers William had planted years ago. She felt strangely at peace, despite all the pain of the past few days. For the first time in decades, she wasn't protecting anyone from anything. She wasn't pretending problems didn't exist. And as painful as it was, there was something freeing in that. The phone rang. It was Matthew. "Grandma, can I come over after school? I want to talk to you more." "Of course, sweetheart. I'll make you a snack." "Grandma?" "Yes?" "Thank you for telling me the truth yesterday, for treating me like an adult." "You're welcome, Matthew. From now on, I'll always treat you like an adult." When Matthew arrived from school, he and Eleanor sat in the kitchen with sandwiches and milk. "Grandma, I talked to some friends today about what happened." "What did they say?" "That complicated families are more common than we think, that everyone has secrets." "And what did you think about that?" "I think it's true, but I also think it's no excuse to lie to each other." Eleanor smiled. Her grandson was maturing quickly. "Grandma, can I ask you a question about Grandpa?" "Of course." "Did he know my dad had problems?" Eleanor thought for a moment. "Your grandfather knew Richard needed guidance, but he passed when Richard was still young. Maybe if he had lived, things would have been different." Do you think Grandpa would have been disappointed in my dad? He would have been, but he'd also be proud to see you handling this so maturely. Grandma, can I tell you a secret? Go ahead. Sometimes I'm scared I'll end up like my dad. Eleanor stopped eating and looked straight at Matthew. Why are you afraid of that? Because he's my dad, and if he's capable of lying and stealing, maybe I am too. Matthew, you're capable of anything you choose to do, but you're also capable of choosing to be a different person than your dad. How can I be sure? By being honest. Always. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. What if I make mistakes? You will. Everyone does. But when you do, face the consequences instead of running from them. Matthew nodded thoughtfully. Grandma, there's something else I want to tell you. What is it? There's a boy at my school who likes me, and I think I like him too. Eleanor felt her heart race, not because of the revelation itself, but because of the courage it must have taken Matthew to share it. How do you feel about that? Confused? Scared? My parents always talked about girlfriends, never boyfriends. What do you want? I want to be honest about who I am, but I'm afraid of how the family will react. Eleanor reached across the table and held Matthew's hand. Matthew, it doesn't matter who you are or who you love. You'll always have my support and my love. What about my parents? Your parents will have to learn to accept you as you are, and if they don't, that's their problem, not yours. Are you sure? Absolutely sure. Matthew began to cry, and Eleanor stood to hug him. Thank you, Grandma. I was so scared to tell you. Never be afraid of who you are, my love. The world already has too many people pretending. That night, after Matthew left, Eleanor called Barbara. Barbara, Matthew told me something today that I think you should know. What was it? Eleanor recounted their conversation and heard Barbara sigh on the other end. Mom, that explains a lot. Matthew's been so withdrawn lately. How do you feel about it? Happy that he felt comfortable telling you, and proud of him for having the courage to be honest about who he is. What about Richard? How do you think he'll react? I don't know. Richard's been an unpleasant surprise lately. I hope he won't be one in this too. If he is, we'll protect Matthew. Absolutely. The following week, things in the family began settling into a new rhythm. Richard was in therapy and had managed to locate and repurchase the St. Joseph Medal. Jennifer had decided to stay at her sister's for a few days to think. Barbara had enrolled in a medical school prep course. Then, on a Thursday evening, everything changed again. Eleanor was watching TV when the phone rang. It was a woman she didn't know. Mrs. Eleanor, my name is Carol Anderson. I was your friend Lucy Parker's best friend. Eleanor was confused. Lucy had been her closest friend, but she'd passed away from natural causes 10 years ago. Hello, Carol, how can I help you? Mrs. Eleanor, I need to speak with you about something Lucy asked me to share if anything ever happened to her husband. My husband passed 15 years ago. I know, and Lucy made me promise that if anything happened to Richard, I would tell you the truth. Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. What truth? About what Lucy and your husband William felt for each other all those years. The phone nearly slipped from Eleanor's hand. What are you talking about? May I come over? It's better we talk in person. An hour later, Carol knocked on Eleanor's door. She was a woman in her 70s, well-dressed with a serious expression. Have a seat, Eleanor said, leading her to the living room. Now explain what this is about. Carol opened a folder she had brought. Mrs. Eleanor, Lucy gave me these letters before she passed. She said if anything ever happened to her son Richard, I should show them to you. What letters? Letters William wrote to Lucy over the years, and letters Lucy wrote to him but never sent. Eleanor felt the world spin around her. Are you telling me my husband? I'm telling you William and Lucy loved each other, Mrs. Eleanor. Deeply. For decades. That's impossible. It isn't, and they never acted on it, because they loved you too, and because they respected your friendship. Carol took an envelope from the folder. This is a letter Lucy wrote to you before she passed. It explains everything. Eleanor took the envelope with trembling hands and read, "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, Carol has kept my promise to tell you the truth if anything happened to Richard. Eleanor, I loved William from the day I met him, and he loved me too. But you were already together, you had a family, you had a life. We never acted on our feelings because we loved you too much to destroy your happiness. All those afternoons I spent at your house, all those family dinners, all those moments the three of us shared. They were torture and blessing at once. Torture because I wanted William for myself, blessing because I could be near him. William wrote me letters for 40 years. I wrote him letters too. None were ever sent. They're all here. We decided you'd know after you passed because we didn't want you to live with the knowledge. But now that I've gone first, I leave this choice to Carol. Eleanor, please don't hate William's memory. He was a good man in an impossible situation. He chose to stay with you every day for 50 years, chose to be faithful, present, the husband you deserved. I chose to be your friend every day for 40 years, chose to support your marriage, celebrate your joys, mourn your sorrows. We loved you, Eleanor, both of us, differently. But we did. The letters are here because you deserve the truth. What you do with them is your choice. With eternal love, Lucy. Eleanor finished reading with tears streaming down her face. Carol waited silently as she processed it. Why tell me now? Why not 15 years ago when William passed? Because Lucy said I should only tell you if something happened to Richard. She said if he became the kind of person who would violate his father's memory, you'd need to know even William had secrets. Eleanor stared at Carol in disbelief. Lucy knew Richard would desecrate the grave? Not exactly, but she knew Richard since he was a boy. Knew he had troubling tendencies. She said if he ever did something to shake your faith in him, you should know even William wasn't perfect. The letters. May I see them? Carol hesitated. Are you sure? Some are intense. I'm sure. Carol handed her a stack of letters, yellowed with age. Eleanor opened the first one, written in William's familiar handwriting. My dearest Lucy, today Eleanor talked about how lucky she is to have a friend like you. If she knew how I feel when you're near, she wouldn't feel so lucky. I hate myself for feeling this. I hate myself for looking at you and wishing things were different. But I can't stop. Eleanor is a good wife, a good mother. She deserves a husband who loves her completely. And I do love her. I truly do. But there's a part of my heart that will always be yours. Forgive me for writing this. Forgive me for feeling this. William. Eleanor read several letters, each revealing a deep and painful love that had lasted decades. She read Lucy's letters too, just as passionate, just as tormented. Carol? Eleanor finally said. Is there anything else I should know? There is. William left something for Lucy when he passed. A property he bought without your knowledge. A property? A small farm on the outskirts of town. He wanted Lucy to have something that was just hers. Lucy never told you, because she didn't want to cause more trouble. Where is this property now? It belongs to Lucy's daughter, Melissa. She lives there with her children. Eleanor felt utterly lost. In 1 week, she had discovered her son was capable of stealing from his father's grave, that she had favored one son over the other for decades, and now that her husband had loved another woman for 50 years. Carol, why did Lucy think I needed to know this? Because she said when we find out people aren't who we thought they were, we also have to realize that doesn't make the love we felt for them any less real. Eleanor was silent for a long time. Did William love me? He did. Deeply. The letters make that very clear. He just also loved Lucy. And did Lucy love me? Like a sister. Her letters talk about how guilty she felt for loving William, but also how much she cherished your friendship. After Carol left, Eleanor sat alone in the room with the letters scattered around her. She felt betrayed, yet strangely comforted. William had had his secrets just like Richard, but William had chosen to live with his secrets without tearing the family apart. Richard had chosen to act on his destructive impulses. The phone rang. It was Barbara. Mom, How was your day? Complicated. Very complicated. Did something happen? Barbara, can you come over? There's something I need to tell you. Of course. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When Barbara arrived and Eleanor told her about the letters, Barbara stayed quiet for a long time. Mom, how do you feel about this? I don't know. Betrayed, but also relieved. Relieved? To know William wasn't perfect either, that he had secrets too. Somehow that makes it easier to accept that Richard isn't who I thought he was. Barbara read a few of the letters and shook her head. It's strange, Mum. I always thought Lucy was very fond of Dad, but I never imagined. Neither did I, and I lived with them for decades. Are you going to tell Richard? I don't know. I'm still processing everything. And the property? Will you reach out to Lucy's daughter? I think so. I'm curious about her. The next day, Eleanor called Carol and got Melissa's number, Lucy's daughter. They arranged to meet at the farm William had left for her mother. The property was about an hour's drive from town. Barbara offered to drive, and they made the trip in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. The farm was small but well kept. There was a modest house, a flower garden, and a few fruit trees. Melissa waited for them on the porch, a woman in her 50s with her mother's gentle face. Mrs. Wilson, I'm Melissa. It's a pleasure. The pleasure is mine, dear. This is my daughter, Barbara. They sat on the porch, and Melissa served lemonade. Mrs. Eleanor, Carol told me you found out about my mother and your husband. I did. And I want you to know I don't hold any anger toward you or your mother. Thank you. I grew up knowing this story. My mother was always very honest with me about her feelings. What was it like for her? Hard. She loved William deeply, but she also loved you. She said you were the two great loves of her life. Barbara leaned forward. And what about this property? How did William manage to buy it without my mother knowing? He used the money from side jobs for years. My mother tried to refuse, but he insisted, said he wanted her to have a place that was just hers. Eleanor looked around the property. It's a beautiful place. It is. My mother spent the last years of her life here. She said she felt closer to William here. Melissa, Eleanor said, legally, does this property belong to you? Yes. William made sure everything was documented, but I always knew that if you ever found out and wanted, I don't want to take this property from you, but I'd like to make a proposal. What kind of proposal? I'd like to turn this place into something that honors both your mother's and my husband's memory, a place where people can come when they're dealing with family secrets, with complicated relationships. Melissa looked at her in surprise. You want to do what? A support center, a place where families can talk honestly about their problems, where people can get help handling difficult situations. Mrs. Eleanor, that would be beautiful. Would you be willing to partner with me on this? We could split the costs and responsibilities. Of course. My mother would be so happy knowing this place is helping people. Barbara smiled. Mom, it's a wonderful idea. And the two of you could be the first people to receive help here, Melissa said. I know a family therapist who'd be perfect for helping you process everything you've learned. You think we need therapy? Eleanor asked. I think every family needs a safe space, to be honest. And after everything you've been through, professional help would be good. In the following weeks, Eleanor, Barbara, and Melissa worked together to establish the center. Richard, when he heard about the project, offered to help with the legal and administrative side. Mom, he said during one of the planning meetings, can I ask why you decided to do this? Because I've learned every family has secrets, and I've learned hiding those secrets always causes more harm than revealing them. What about Dad's letters? Will you show them to me? Eleanor thought for a moment. I will, but first, you need to finish your therapy and prove you can handle the truth without running from it. Okay, I understand. The first person to seek help at the center was, surprisingly, Jennifer. She had decided to stay with Richard, but wanted couples therapy in a neutral setting. Mrs. Eleanor, she said during the first session, I chose to stay with Richard because I realized we all have secrets, The question is, what we do with them. And what have you decided to do? I've decided we're going to be a family that talks about problems instead of hiding them. The therapist Melissa had recommended, Dr. Sarah, became a regular presence at the center. She helped Eleanor and Barbara work through years of unspoken resentment. Eleanor, Dr. Sarah said during one session, do you realize you spent decades protecting your family from the truth? I do. And now? Now I want them to learn how to handle the truth on their own. Matthew was one of the surprises of the process. He adapted quickly to the new family dynamic and became a sort of mediator when tensions arose. Grandma, he said one day, I told my parents about liking boys. How did they react? My father was confused at first but said he loves me for who I am. My mother cried, but out of relief. She said she always knew I was hiding something. And you, how do you feel? Relieved. I can finally be myself. 6 months after the discovery of the ring, Eleanor organized a family gathering downtown. Present were Richard, Jennifer, now visibly pregnant, Barbara, Matthew, and Melissa. I want everyone to know, Eleanor began, that I've decided to share William's letters with you. Richard abruptly lifted his head. Seriously, Mom. Seriously. But first, each of you will tell me a truth you've never shared with the family. Mom, Barbara started. No protests. If we're going to be an honest family, we start now. Richard went first. I always knew I was Mom's favorite, and I used that to get what I wanted, even though I knew it was unfair to Barbara. Barbara was next. I always resented Mom for making me give up medicine, but I also resented myself for not fighting for what I wanted. Jennifer hesitated before speaking. I knew about Richard's financial troubles for over a year, and I knew about the affair before I found the messages. I just pretended I didn't, because I was afraid to face the truth. Matthew surprised everyone. I always felt guilty for being gay in a family that never talked about these things. I thought I was broken. Melissa, who had become part of the extended family, also participated. I was always jealous of you, Mrs. Wilson. My mother talked about you so much that sometimes I felt she loved you more than me. Eleanor listened to everyone in silence. When they finished, she took a deep breath. Now it's my turn. I always knew I treated Richard and Barbara differently, and I always knew I was hurting Barbara, but I kept doing it because it was easier than admitting I was wrong. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. The silence that followed was different from before. It was a silence of understanding, not tension. Now, Eleanor said, pulling the letters from a folder, you're ready to learn William's secrets. They spent the next 2 hours reading the letters. There were tears, surprises, and even some laughter when they read some of the more romantic ones. Dad really loved Lucy, Richard finally said. He did, but he also loved me, and he chose our family every day for 50 years. How can you not be angry with him? Matthew asked. Because I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean they have to be perfect. It means accepting they can have contradictions and still choosing to love them. Barbara held one of Lucy's letters. Mom, Lucy really loved you too. It says here she considered you the best person she ever knew. I know. And that makes it all even more complicated, doesn't it? It's hard to be angry at people who loved us even while keeping secrets. By the end of the gathering, everyone agreed to continue family therapy sessions at the center. They also decided to hold monthly meetings where each could share things they were feeling or hiding. A year after the 80th birthday party, Eleanor threw another celebration. But this time, it was different. Instead of material gifts, each family member brought a letter sharing something they'd learned over the past year. Richard read his first. I learned that being an adult means facing the consequences of my actions. I learned that lying to protect others is really lying to protect myself. And I learned that my family loves me even knowing all my flaws. Barbara was next. I learned that it's never too late to chase a dream. At 42, I'm starting medical school next semester. I also learned that holding on to resentment hurts me more than the people I'm angry with. Jennifer, now holding her 3-month-old baby, read her letter. I learned that a marriage can't survive with secrets. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing to build something new from what was broken. Matthew, now 18 and more mature, went next. I learned that being honest about who I am is more important than making people comfortable. I learned that my family loves me for who I am, not who they wanted me to be. Melissa, now considered part of the family, shared, I learned it's possible to honor the past while building something new. I learned that family secrets can become bridges instead of walls. Eleanor was the last. I learned that protecting people from the truth actually robs them of the chance to grow. I learned that an honest family is stronger than a seemingly perfect one, and I learned that true love means accepting people as they really are, not as we wish they were. When they finished reading the letters, Richard stood up. "Mum, can I say something?" "Of course." "A year ago, when I pushed your face into the cake, I was trying to create a joyful moment in a family that was drifting apart. I never imagined that gesture would reveal so many secrets." "And do you regret doing it?" Richard thought for a moment. "No, because if I hadn't, maybe we'd never have discovered our family was built on lies, and we'd never have had the chance to build something real." Eleanor looked around the table and saw her family. Imperfect, complicated, but finally honest. "You know what else I learned?" she said. "I learned it's not what we hide that defines our family. It's what we choose to do when the secrets come to light." That night, after everyone had left, Eleanor sat in the living room with William's wedding ring in her hand. She hadn't returned it to the grave. Instead, she wore it on a chain close to her heart. Not because she wanted to keep William to herself, but because she had learned that we carry the people we love with us, with all their secrets and imperfections. The Family Support Center had become a small but meaningful success. Several families in the area sought help dealing with revealed secrets, uncovered betrayals, and complicated relationships. Eleanor had become an informal counselor of sorts, helping others her age navigate difficult discoveries about children, spouses, and friends. Mrs. Wilson, a 70-year-old woman, had said the week before, "How do you keep loving your family after everything you found out?" "Because I learned that love isn't about someone being perfect," Eleanor had replied. "It's about choosing to stay and build something better together." 2 weeks before her 81st birthday, Eleanor got an unexpected call. It was Dr. Sarah. "Eleanor, I have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "I'd like you to consider writing a book about your experience, about how a family can rebuild after difficult revelations." "A book? I'm not a writer." "You don't have to be. We have a partnership with a publisher that specializes in true stories. They'd provide a co-author." Eleanor considered the offer. "Why do you think my story would interest others?" "Because your story shows it's possible to forgive without forgetting, rebuild without denying what happened, and love without idealizing. Those are lessons many families need to learn." "I'll need to think about it." "Of course. But Eleanor, consider this. Your story could help other families going through what you went through." That night, Eleanor discussed the proposal with Barbara. "Mom, I think you should write this book." "Do you really think so?" "I do. Our story could help others understand that complicated families aren't ruined families." "And you wouldn't mind me sharing our secrets with the world?" "Mom, our secrets aren't secrets anymore. They're lessons learned." Eleanor decided to accept the offer. The process of writing the book was therapeutic, forcing her to reflect even more deeply on everything that had happened. The hardest part was writing about Richard. How could she tell the story of a son who had violated his father's grave without demonizing him? How could she explain favoritism without justifying it? "Mom," Richard said when he read the draft chapters about him, "you were honest but fair. Thank you for not painting me as a monster." "You're not a monster, Richard. You're a person who made terrible choices. There's a difference. And now, how do you see me? I see you as my son, learning to be a better person, and that's enough for me." The book was published 6 months after Eleanor's 81st birthday. The launch was held at the Family Support Center, with the whole family present. "Mrs. Wilson," said a young woman in the audience, "my family also had painful revelations recently. Your book helped me understand that we can choose how to respond to them. What did you choose? I chose to forgive my mother for hiding my adoption for 20 years, and I chose to build a new relationship with her, based on truth. After the event, Eleanor sat in the center's garden with her family. "Do you know what I learned most from writing this book?" she said. "What?" asked Matthew, now studying psychology in college. "I learned our story didn't end when we uncovered the secrets. It began when we decided what to do with them." Jennifer, now holding her 1-year-old daughter, smiled. "Mrs. Wilson, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you still feel angry at Richard for what he did?" Eleanor looked at her son, who was playing with his daughter. "I do, but I'm also proud of him for facing the consequences and changing. Both can exist at once." "And your husband? Do you still resent him for the secrets?" "Sometimes, but mostly I'm grateful he chose our family. Even while loving someone else, that must have been so hard for him." Barbara, now in her 2nd year of medical school and glowing with happiness, joined the conversation. "Mum, if you could go back in time, would you change anything?" Eleanor thought for a long moment. "I'd change how I raised you. I'd be more honest, less protective. I'd teach you to face problems instead of avoiding them." "What about Dad and Lucy?" "I wouldn't change a thing. They made the choices they thought were right at the time, and we made ours about how to handle the truth." Melissa, recently married and pregnant, stepped closer to the group. "Mrs. Wilson, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "My mother left one more letter, one meant to be opened only when the center had been running for a year." "What does it say?" Melissa pulled an envelope from her pocket. "Would you like me to read it?" Eleanor nodded. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, it means you've made something beautiful from a painful situation. I'm proud of you. I want you to know I never regretted loving William, but I also never regretted being your friend. Both loves were real and both made me a better person. I hope you understand it's possible to love someone and still respect the commitments they've made to others. William loved me, but he chose you every day. That made me love him even more. Take care of our family, because now we are an extended family united by the understanding that love is complicated but worth it. With eternal love, Lucy. P.S. In the attic of the farmhouse, there's a box with photos of the 3 of us together over the years, photos where we were all happy, even without knowing the unspoken feelings. Keep those photos. They show that it's possible to be happy even in the midst of complexity. Eleanor finished listening to the letter with tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of peace, not pain. "Do you know what else this letter taught me?" she said to the gathered family. "What?" they asked in unison. "That Lucy was right. It's possible to be happy even in the midst of complexity. It's possible to love even when we don't fully understand the feelings of the people we love." Richard stepped closer to Eleanor. "Mom, can I say something?" "Of course. Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For giving me the chance to become a better person." Eleanor hugged her son. "Richard, I would never give up on you, but I'll also never stop you from facing the consequences of your actions again." "I know, and I'm grateful for that too." That night, after everyone had left, Eleanor went up to the attic of the farmhouse and found the box Lucy had mentioned. Inside were hundreds of photos of the family over the years. Photos of backyard barbecues, birthdays, graduations, weddings. In all of them, William, Eleanor, and Lucy appeared together, smiling genuinely. Looking at the photos, Eleanor realized she had been happy in those moments, even without knowing the unspoken feelings. And perhaps that was the most important lesson of all, that we can be genuinely happy even when we don't know the whole truth. But she also realized that knowing the truth, no matter how painful, allows for a different kind of happiness, a happiness based on reality, not illusion. On her 82nd birthday, Eleanor threw a party unlike any before. Instead of gifts, she asked each person to bring a photo that represented a moment of genuine happiness, even in the midst of hardship. Richard brought a photo of him with his daughter. On the first day, she smiled at him after learning about the grave. "This photo represents the moment I understood I could be forgiven, even after disappointing the people I love so much. Barbara brought a photo of herself on her first day of medical school. This photo represents the moment I understood it's never too late to start over. Jennifer brought a photo of the whole family together at the support center. This photo represents the moment I understood a family can be stronger after being broken and rebuilt. Matthew brought a photo of himself with his boyfriend. This photo represents the moment I understood that being loved for who I truly am is better than being loved for who I pretend to be. Melissa brought a photo of Lucy and Eleanor hugging, taken years earlier. This photo represents the moment my mother taught me it's possible to love without possessing. Eleanor, last, brought a photo of William holding baby Richard at the hospital. This photo represents the moment I understood that true love isn't about being perfect, but about being present. After everyone shared their photos and stories, Eleanor stood to make a toast. "I want to toast to our family," she said. "A family that learned the truth may hurt, but lies hurt more. A family that learned we can choose how to react when we discover people aren't who we thought they were." "To our family," everyone said in unison. And this time, when it was time to cut the cake, no one pushed anyone's face into it. Instead, Eleanor cut the first slice and offered it to Richard. "Thank you, Mom," he said, understanding the symbolism of the gesture. "You're welcome, my son. But this time, eat your own piece." Everyone laughed, and Eleanor realized that sound, the sound of her family laughing together, genuinely happy despite all their imperfections, was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. 6 months later, Eleanor received a letter from a reader of her book. "Dear Mrs. Wilson, my name is Kathy, and I'm 45 years old. I read your book after discovering my husband had lied about a serious financial situation that nearly cost us our home. Your story helped me understand that I could choose how to react. I could let the betrayal of trust destroy our family, or I could use this revelation as an opportunity to rebuild our relationship on more honest grounds. I chose the second option. My husband and I started couples therapy, our teenage children joined family sessions, and we're learning to talk about problems instead of hiding them. It won't be easy, and I don't know if we'll succeed, but I know we're trying honestly for the first time in years. Thank you for showing me it's possible to love someone even after realizing they're not who we thought they were. With gratitude, Kathy." Eleanor kept the letter alongside many others she had received. Each told a different story, but all spoke of families learning to face difficult truths. "Mom," Barbara said when she visited Eleanor that weekend, "how does it feel knowing your story is helping so many people?" "It makes me feel useful," Eleanor replied. "Like all the pain we went through had a purpose. And if someone asked you what the most important thing you've learned from all this is, what would you say?" Eleanor thought for a moment. "I'd say I've learned that we can't control the choices other people make, even the ones we love. But we can always choose how we respond to those choices. Anything else? That a truly strong family isn't one without problems. It's one that learns to face them together, with honesty and love." That evening, Eleanor sat in the garden with William's wedding ring in her hand, as had become her habit. But this time, she wasn't thinking about the past. She was thinking about the future. In a few weeks, Matthew would graduate from university. Barbara would finish medical school the following year. Richard and Jennifer were expecting their second child. Melissa had opened a second branch of the Family Support Center in another city. All of them had been transformed by the revelations of the past few years. They weren't the same people who had been at the 80th birthday party when it all began, but Eleanor realized this transformation hadn't been a loss. It had been a rebirth. "William," she whispered to the stars, "I hope wherever you are, you know we've finally learned how to be a real family. Not a perfect one, but a true one." The wind rustled the leaves, and Eleanor chose to take it as an answer. The next morning, she woke with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in decades, not because all their problems were solved, but because she'd learned that some problems don't need solving to be accepted. She made coffee and sat in the kitchen, gazing through the window at the garden William had planted so many years ago. The flowers were blooming, some plants had grown in unexpected directions, and there were weeds that needed pulling. Just like a family, she thought, always growing, always changing, always needing care, but beautiful in its imperfection. The phone rang, a voice she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Wilson, my name is Patricia. I read your book and would like to bring my family to a session at the support center. We just found out that my 40-year-old daughter isn't my husband's biological child, and we're all feeling very lost." Eleanor smiled. Another family needing to learn that revealed secrets could be the start of something better, not the end of everything. "Of course, Patricia. Let's schedule a meeting, and remember, discovering the truth is always scary, but it's also always liberating." After scheduling the session, Eleanor called Barbara. "Sweetheart, another family needs our help." "What kind of situation?" "Questioned paternity after 40 years. Oh my, how do you think they'll handle it?" "The same way we did, one day at a time, with lots of honesty and a little bit of faith." "Mom?" "Yes?" "I love you, and I'm grateful for everything we've been through together." "I love you too, Barbara, and you know what, I'm grateful too." When Eleanor hung up the phone, she looked around the kitchen and smiled. In a few hours, her home would be full of family again, not for a forced celebration or a tense gathering, but for a simple lunch where people who loved each other came together to share their lives. Imperfect people who had learned to love each other not despite their flaws, but including them. And that, Eleanor knew, was the true recipe for happiness, not the absence of problems, but the presence of people willing to face them together. The end. Dear listener, now we'd love to know, what did you think of this story of discovery and family rebuilding? How would you react if you uncovered secrets about people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other moving stories about family, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Thank you so much for being here with us.